Hello, everyone, beautiful friends. I have something slightly different for you today. We are going to go on a journey together over a number of interviews, and my beautiful friend Clea from the States, my beautiful new friend who I met through Mark Atwood's course, is going to be my first lovely interviewee chat friend. And what we're talking about here is reclamation of sexual sovereignty. Now, I know you followed my channel and we've been talking about menopause, but what's starting to be dawning upon me is the issues that menopausal women are having with disconnection from their body, not feeling safe to feeling what's going on in their body. It's actually happening to most women. It doesn't matter what age you are. So my heart has just been like blown open with conversations I've been having. And I want to talk a lot more about reclaiming our sexual sovereignty, because let's face it, from day one, it's been hijacked. If you think about the experiences you've had when you first got your periods, when your breasts were starting to grow, when you were dabbling in, sexual dalliances with partners at an early age, it often felt full of fear and shame. It was never about empowerment, was it, Clea? It was never about how amazing is this body and get out into the world and experience pleasure. I mean, I was chuckling yesterday, Clea, when I remembered about sex education at school. And it was like, where to stick it and make sure you don't get pregnant, right? Anyway, so this is our history, everyone, and we want to wipe the slate clean and we want to reclaim that sexual sovereignty. So Clea, my beautiful friend from the States, is an expert in narcissism, calling out narcissism from her own experience. And isn't it amazing how the shit experiences we have in life become the medicine we bring to the world? So Clea and I are going to talk about reclaiming our sexual sovereignty from her perspective and my perspective. And as many of you may not know, I had breast cancer about 10 years ago, and that just completely cut me off from my body. So that's the direction we're going to go in today. And I know that even though our experiences might be a little bit different from yours, there will be things that you hear from us today. And it's like, oh, she's talking to me. Oh, that happened to me, but in my scenario. So welcome, beautiful Clea. Thank you for being here with me on my YouTube channel.
Thank you for having me. This is a pleasure.
Yeah. So I'm going to let you kick off, my love, and I want you to talk a little bit about narcissism, make it clear to people what exactly you see in the world from a narcissistic perspective, and how this is a really big picture, as we've just been talking about. And let's dabble a little bit more into perhaps your experience of reclaiming sexual sovereignty as well, and what that has meant for you. And then we'll just chat, and then I'll talk a little bit about my breast cancer, and then I'll talk about the wonderful ebook that you've created as well. So yeah, where are we at with narcissism, right? Is it not turned up to volume like 25 right now in the world?
Seriously, it really is. I think that one of the things we assume is that narcissism only happens in relationships. So in individual one-on-one relationships, whether that's with a partner, a friend, or a colleague, your boss, or whatever that might be, I think very few people realize narcissism is all around us. The government is very narcissistic. Because what is a narcissist at the end of the day is a person who doesn't care about you. All they care about is themselves, and they're willing to lie, cheat, and steal to get what they want. Well, does anybody recognize what's happening in the world today? Exactly. Basically, they're willing to do whatever it takes to get what they want. And if you are in their way, they will walk right over your dead body if that's what it takes. So we are seeing, I am mostly surprised that this wasn't as obvious before, that they have ratcheted up, to the maximum volume now. Because the truth is, this has always been the MO, the modus operandi of governments. They cannot produce anything. All they can do is take. They're rapacious by nature. So for me to like look at people trying to say, oh, the government is a necessary evil, and evil is never necessary. And evil is evil. We can do without. So what I am attempting to do right now in general with my content is show people that things don't have to be, we have been taught, we've been programmed to think that we need a certain evil in our lives. This is the reason why people like myself, I made the mistake myself, are in narcissistic relationships for decades. Why? Because you keep justifying to yourself why you made that mistake and why you find yourself in that situation.
Exactly.
The question is not, you can have all the time in the world to think about why you made the mistake, and that's very important, because in order to avoid making the same mistakes again and again, we must look at ourselves and say, hey, why did I allow this? Okay. And then you go in and figure out what happened. But you can figure all that out after you leave the narcissistic relationship. You don't have to hang in there to figure it out, because being in the wrong relationship, whether again, that's an emotional relationship, a personal relationship, or in general, say the relationship with your doctor, a person who doesn't really listen to you, doesn't know you, and all they want to do is put you in a box and sell you some drugs, which is what most doctors around the world do. They're salespeople. That's all they are. You know, you can figure that out after you put some healthy distance between you and them. That's the thing. And I think a lot of the people that will survive the situation that's happening right now are the people who are willing to walk away. And I was just mentioning before we started this, how I was very confused when I was going through the period of time when I decided I was going to leave my husband. And why is that? Of course, you're thinking of all the pros and cons. You know, you're in the process of deciding to change your life. I was 3 months pregnant when I found out my ex-husband had been cheating on me with prostitutes since we got married. And I found out the day of my 15th wedding anniversary.
Anniversary. Oh my darling,
the universe
so bad.
needs to show you something. You know what? The universe has a sense of humor, and I appreciate that. So that's all right. Listen, better late than never, right? But as you go through a situation like that, it's not black and white. Sometimes you can imagine, I'm thinking, okay, I'm pregnant. What do I want for my child? You know, am I willing to sacrifice myself? And of course I was willing to sacrifice myself. That meant for me not to be with this man, even though it would have been easier in some ways to do that, because I had to give up, you know, a really good lifestyle, et cetera, but I didn't want my daughter to grow up in that environment. But here's the question that tipped the balance for me in one split second. I asked myself, I stepped back and I said, all right, if I met this man today, would I even want to be friends with him? And I was thinking to myself, I don't even want to go have a glass of wine with this man. Like, I never want to hear from him again. Well, guess what? That's an easy answer, right? And the same thing with things around yourself. You don't have to make it complicated. Excuse me. I have allergies. It's that time of the year here. You don't have to make it complicated. You can look at a situation, whether it's a doctor, whether it's a job, whatever it is in your life, and be like, all right, so there's a lot of water under the bridge here. But here's the question. If I were to start today and I had this choice, I had this option in front of me, would I take it? Would I be okay with this? I was talking with a friend of mine about California, people in California. And we were laughing, saying, who wants to live in California nowadays? I mean, besides the fact that have all these fires, smoke in their houses, that's a horrible situation. But the government is completely like, you might as well live in China. I don't even know. And some people still want to be there because they remember 20, 30 years ago, it was such a wonderful place. I'm like, it's no longer the actual truth of today. If you were to choose where to grow, where to raise a family, or where to go, that's the last place on earth you want to go. But people are married to the past, like it's still real.
And people are so numbed out to the narcissism. People are so used to it, and it's almost like it's insidiously crept in. And when you said at some point, why did I allow this? Well, we allow this because we have cut off from the way it makes us feel, because it's so painful to recognize how bad it is. in your marriage, in the way they're being treated in California, the way we're being treated in Australia. This is October 2021. We're recording this. We have had to protect ourselves from how bad these situations have made us feel by turning down our capacity to feel. But once we do that, then we're slapped around like in a washing machine. And you must have seen that in your own marriage, is, why am I putting up with this? Why am I putting up with this? And it takes a lot of courage to actually reclaim a bit of your power. And you must have had many a sleepless night, like just thinking, how am I going to get out of this? What am I going to do about this? Obviously, being pregnant was a very big catalyst for you to make a big change. But how did you go on that journey? And we could talk about this for a day and a half, but can you help us understand, what did you kind of do to start to reclaim that and say, I won't allow this anymore? Like, this is really useful stuff for people to hear. Like, what can I actually do when I feel myself in this kind of situation?
Yeah, it's interesting because sometimes it's more about what you have to stop doing than what you're actually doing.
Right.
A lot of us, what we do, we get busier and busier when we're trying to survive.
Yeah.
And this busyness is a self-defense mechanism. So we don't have to think and we don't have to feel.
Yeah.
I was the busiest person you can ever imagine. Yeah. I had a period of my life I was so unhappy that I used to work 18 hours a day.
Yeah.
Until I got into a really bad accident. And that's what actually jolted me back to reality. I just wanted to numb myself out. And for me, work was the way to do it, because I had my own business. So I could justify to myself, well, I'm working hard because, nobody else is going to take care of my business. Yeah. These are all lies. I was working because I didn't want to be present in my life. Very, just as simple as that. Yeah. So a lot of us, even when we are dealing with things, we're going to do in mode. But the truth is, when you have lost yourself, because this is actually what happens to us, we lose ourselves. We lose our identity. We are a shadow or a former selves. Because nobody, when he's a child, is thinking, oh, I want to be married and I want to be mistreated and I want to feel like crap all the time. Nobody makes this plan, but somehow a lot of us find ourselves in a situation. Why? Because you forget. And you busy yourself with other things, so you don't have to think about it. You're like, well, I love my job, so it's okay that my private life sucks. We don't say this openly, but this is really what's going on behind the scenes. And my cat is trying to jump on my lap, so we might have a guest, another guest very soon.
Sorry, friend.
So the first thing that I would recommend, which is actually what I did, is I put, so this is not my tail. That's why I warned you. I put physical distance between myself and my ex-husband. We were living in Thailand at the time. And so I actually came back to the United States, and that allowed me to start clearing the clouds, because you're in a fog and there is so much going on. And that allowed me, and it doesn't mean that I had already decided 100% that I wasn't going to go back. But when you put distance between a situation and yourself, you actually realize that you can think more clearly. Okay. And thinking clearly is the first step. But another way to think clearly is also to reduce to the minimum terms the things that keep you busy. The problem with a lot of us in this world right now on this planet, how did they get us? You know how they got us? We are so busy working to survive that we don't have time to think. We cannot even afford to think. Absolutely. You cannot even afford to think, because if you stop, you're going to lose your job, then you're going to lose your house. You can't pay the mortgage. You have credit card debt, whatever the case might be. You really have no freedom. So it's much easier not to think. And a lot of people now are paying with the ultimate price, taking experimental drugs because they've been told that's what they have to do. They will not stop giving them to you until you're gone. Because how many can you possibly take? How many boosters can you take before your health fails? No one has ever become healthier by taking poison. No. I don't care any other details. People get lost in all the little details of the argument back and forth. But when the premise of something is that we are going to have some magical thinking where you can inject poison and become healthier because of it, I cannot even have a conversation about this.
No. I think it's it's like the nth degree of disconnecting from our own wisdom and our knowing and handing our power over to others. And that's what sovereignty is all about. You know, hey, you take care of this issue. You take care of this disease that's moving through, so that they don't have to go in and just question for themselves. And I actually posed this question yesterday in a conversation I had. Why do you think that certain people like you and I actually take a stand? You got out of your marriage. I got out of my marriage. We have said no to certain things. Why do you think we do that? That's not the easy road, Clea. That is the hard road. It would have been much easier for you to just stay in that marriage, turn your brain off, shut your heart down in a little box and just do the thing. But we have something in us that says, I've got goosebumps down my legs. That's always a sign that something's happening. We have this knowing deep within us that we are worth more. And I think this is really at the heart of the lack of sovereignty. I'm not worth it. It doesn't matter. That's not at a conscious level necessarily, but at a subconscious level. Making the big decision, saying the no, leaving the relationship, reconnecting to the grief of having lost my breasts and having no hair. That's where the magic can happen. But people are just so reluctant to take the reins. And look at the result of it. It is actually a devastating result. So when you started to make the big decisions and take the action, like what spurred you on? Like what happened inside you alchemically that made you actually reclaim your power and do something about it?
I do believe that each one of us has a point of no return. The problem is that neither you nor the other person who's pushing your buttons knows where that is. So in my particular case, when I discovered that my ex-husband was, going with prostitutes every single night and had been doing it for decades, that was a point of no return for me, for the simple reason that was actually not the first time I found out. I found out a few years prior while we were living in Dubai. But he had convinced me that it was because of the environment. And I believe that people make mistakes. I wasn't willing at the time to throw away my marriage over that. I still loved him, and I still thought, you know what, everybody makes mistakes.
Yeah, I'll forgive him. He won't do it again. It'll all be okay.
Correct. Except that I was a fool. And I have since realized that there are certain things where the odds are not in your favor. This was not something where it would have been likely for him to stop doing it. And the truth be told, and this is not to justify him, the environment is set up to make men weak and to do certain types of cheating, specifically in places like Dubai, Thailand, etc. This is not an excuse. There are plenty of men who don't cheat. However, talking about the narcissistic programming we live in, that's one way to undermine us, right? Is to make men addicted to porn, et cetera, et cetera. It's not a huge industry by chance. I mean, there is a lot of studying that goes into it. But that said, clearly there are ways not to be addicted to it. So this is not to make excuses for people who are addicted. All I'm saying is, it is definitely a very addictive addiction. So I made the mistake in my naivete to think that this was something that he could get out of. The truth is, it takes a certain personality that is very unusual in a person who already is attracted to that. So the odds were really not in our favor. But bottom line is, the second time this happened, what happened is that I realized that this wasn't a mistake. You make a mistake one time, the second time you have a problem, and not only he wasn't interested enough in fixing it, so to me that was easy. So what I'm trying to say is that each one of us, and you don't know until you're up against the wall, have a point where you get to, and even if you've forgotten everything else about yourself, you're like, whoa, all of a sudden, like it slaps you, like you're saying, it slaps you back to reality, and you realize that, wow, what am I doing? So what we were describing earlier is this gradual devolution into some kind of fearful person. You become this fearful person who is not who you were meant. Correct. It's the it's the analogy of is the anecdote of the boiled frog. You don't put a frog in a pot of boiling water. You just put it in cold water, and then you increase the temperature little by little, and the frog cannot tell the difference. This is how we live. We accept. You're not going to accept a person walking on the street, off the sidewalk, coming over and punching you in the face. But guess what? There are plenty of women who live with men who punch them in the face every day. How did they get there? One step after another. That's right. So when do you say stop? Because I have asked myself this question many times. What did it take for me? At which point of the many signs of disrespect I've been subjected to by my ex-husband, at which point do I say, all right, that's one too many, I'm going to walk away now? You don't, because you resign yourself, but then something happens where it goes beyond that line in the sand. And then it doesn't matter how hard you think it's going to be. One piece of advice I would give your viewers is that, and this is exactly what's being used against us right now. That's why I want to talk about this. We are being manipulated through fear. Why is that? Why is it so easy to manipulate people through fear? Just very simply, in the microcosm and in the macrocosm. Fear is vague. I can do something that makes you fearful, and whatever your fear is, it will work for you, because it doesn't matter what fear you have. As long as I create an environment of fear, you will do the rest of the work to make yourself scared, because you are going to go inside and leverage and connect with that afraid place inside of you. Okay. I don't have to do that much. I just have to hint that something is scary. Doesn't even have to make sense. You're like this illness. We don't even know if there is an illness, because we still haven't seen the numbers. So, but you know what? It doesn't matter, because people are scared for other reasons. They're scared of life. They're scared of their existence. They're scared of whatever they're scared of, and they're doing the rest of the work. So what I always tell people is, fear is only scary if it's vague. Once you start shining the light on it and you start qualifying, quantifying, and defining what it is that is so scary to you, you will realize 99 times out of 100, there is no reason for fear at all. In fact, and these are not just speculations of mine. There are many leadership gurus who talk about this. And for example, say that you want to start a new business, but you're afraid. A lot of people stop because, it's too scary. This, that. They don't actually define what it is that they're scared of. Say that your worst case scenario happens. Which one is your worst case scenario? What is the likelihood of that happening? Let's actually talk about details, but people don't do that. For example, right now, so many people are afraid, again, of this such a scary illness that everybody, and their brother seems to survive it somehow. These are facts, okay, that everybody agrees on, both sides, whatever you think you have to do about this, but people don't go there. They're even afraid of talking about it. Why? My personal opinion is that it's because people finally get to say that they are scared. They are scared in life without having to justify to themselves. Because we, for some reason, think we should not be scared of anything. And if we're scared, we're worthless people. Well, guess what? This is being used against us, this pride.
So true. So true. Like we are taught that we shouldn't be afraid and that we should be brave, but then we're given scenario program after program where fear becomes the norm. And I think almost fear becomes like a comfort zone, because then you don't have to think. You don't have to question anything. Fear becomes a familiar sensation in our body. I'll give you an example from Australia yesterday. This blew my mind. And then we'll move on to sexual sovereignty stuff. Yesterday was the first day that a whole lot of things reopened in the state that I live in. And young people like my son, they can go and have a beer in the bar and stand up and talk to their friends now, and all the things that so many people have dreamed of having. Retail can open, people can open their beauty salons again, all of that. Mainstream media put a story out written by a paramedic who was in fear and dreading it because people are going to get killed because you're reopening everything. I live in fear every day, being exposed to this, and now all these people are going to gather together. I am not kidding you. This is toxic levels of fear. And when I read that, I was just like, you've got to be fucking kidding me. Today of all days. Now, what's happened, Clea, is people will read that and their fear response will be triggered again. Oh, maybe I shouldn't go out. Oh, my son. Oh my God, my son's going to be like, can you, like, it's intense. Now, the antidote to that, right? And you and I know this is what we have done for ourselves. Doesn't matter what kind of sovereignty we're reclaiming, whether it's over a relationship changing or sexuality. If we don't tune into the fear and face the fear as an energetic signature, and I say this all the time with my clients, don't even label it as fear. Just feel it as an energetic signature in your body. Until people start to allow themselves, as you say, to name, what am I actually afraid of? And to feel the experience, we're going to stay imprisoned, right?
Absolutely. Yes. You say you want to talk about sovereignty. This is really what it is. You're calling it. Sovereignty means that, one, you accept yourself. And that's the hardest thing to do. We've been told, we're told since we're born, we're sinners and we're dirty and we're smelly and now we're germy too. I'm like, big surprise. But somehow humanity has survived for eons. It's a mystery. But because that's what they are teaching us, right? We're becoming weaker and weaker. And today, really, I would actually agree that we are the weakest we've ever been in many ways. So we are afraid of nothing. We're literally afraid of air or breathing air. But that's what taking your sovereignty back is. It means that you get to the point where you're like, you know what? I accept myself and I accept other people. I don't feel a need to control other people. If they want to go out and have fun, that's okay. If I am so afraid of everything, I can stay inside my house. I don't get to tell other people what they should do or not do. The problem is that a lot of the weak links in humans are very controlling because they need to be controlled. They are so out of control with their own fear that they want to be controlled. They want somebody to tell them what to do, which is absolutely fine. But then they turn around and because it's a him to control, they think it's okay to impose control on other people. The problem is that we have to unlink ourselves from these people. And this is what I think is going to happen. I already know it's going to happen. A lot of people of sovereign individuals are going to leave cities because in cities it's so easy to be packed together. And you don't really get to pick. When you start voting with your feet and moving to rural areas where people think like you, guess what? Whoever's left behind, they're going to have to deal with it. And when it's going to be just them, they're going to realize maybe the control is not so great. I don't know how long this is going to take, but again, it's like we're talking about California. We're going to have to make some hard choices because you cannot talk logic to people who don't want to be in charge of their lives, because you're talking facts and they're talking emotion, which is, I don't want to be in charge of my life. I'm afraid of being alive. That's literally what these people are saying. They're afraid of being alive because it takes guts to be alive. So when you say, oh, where does the moment of truth come? Which point do you say enough? Where you realize that this goes against everything you've ever believed in. So there was a moment where you're like, whoa, and we all get to that moment if you still have something alive inside of you somewhere. And then you really have no choice. It's not hard anymore. So people like you, where you choose to make certain decisions, it's not that you are all happy saying, oh yeah, I'm a sucker for punishment and I really want to suffer in my life. Is that you're already suffering so much and you don't see a way out other than rip off the Band-Aid and keep moving. Because you might suffer for a year, you might suffer for 10 years, but eventually there's a light at the end of the tunnel. For these people, there is no light.
No. There is no light within them. There is no sense of being self-resourced in any of this. It is all about handing responsibility over to others for fixing the problem, for making us happy. And once you do that, there is no end to that cycle, because you continue to lose any connection to your own power, to your own wisdom. And it seems very clear to me now that it's been not beaten literally, but it has been beaten out of us to not think for yourself from the very beginning. Almost as though, let's just prepare society so that they devolve more and more of their inner knowing and their control over. Now, this takes me to sexual sovereignty, and I have been thinking a lot about this and looking at my own life and experiences. They do not want us to connect to the power of our sexuality from a God-given perspective and from what it allows us to tap into. And I'm not talking about distorted sexuality. I'm not talking about the kind of over-sexualization that we see. And this might even be a foreign concept for some people, but your sexual fire is actually a fractal of source. It is your creativity in your human form that is about creating life. And men contribute to that, and the woman contributes to that, and we create life in our own body. Now, to be a creator that can create that, you've got to have a pretty amazing reflection. Oh, and I've lost Clea. She'll come back. I'll just keep going on this thought. If we have that capacity for creativity in us, that is exactly life force. And when we misuse that energy, then we are creating a whole lot of harm, not just to ourselves, but to others as well. So when I talk about sexual sovereignty, this is about reconnecting to the infinite power that sexuality is, that comes as part of being born as a human, and not turning it outward, not shaming it, not having it be wrong or demeaned or made to be about embarrassment and fear, which is exactly what has happened as we've gone through school, as we've gone through life. Now I'm just going to pause the recording and see if I can get Clea back in. All right, so tell us, my love, like what have you read? What's your experience with this reclamation of sexual sovereignty and saying no more? Just like you said before, this is no more about tolerating what has come from out there, but turning into ourselves. So yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with you 100% when you say this is a God-given power that we have. Sexuality, that's why it's been repressed, and that's why it's been turned into porn, because they have done whatever they could to minimize it, to minimize its power. Because the fact is, when you reclaim your sexuality, you become a fully powerful individual. That is part of who we are. To hide and think of dirty, think of something like this as dirty, makes you feel dirty, which is the whole point, right? A lot of religion is based on that, is that we are not divine individuals, which is funny. You would imagine religion would want you to know that you're divine. But I was actually reading a book. It's called Making Love to God by Tina Spalding. She's actually a channeler of Jesus and Ananda, and she's amazing. And she talks very openly about this. Sexuality is our way to connect with our higher self, basically. And you get to do it with someone else, because when two people come together, it is that powerful when they are both in that state. Of course, if you're coming together for very base carnal reasons, which is what they've wanted us to do, then of course it's completely different. And I am not here, I'm not a prude. I'm not here trying to say you should never have sex for sex's, for fun or for sex's sake. That's fine. Knock yourself out However, what we never do is really use sex as an experience to reach God, do we? We haven't even been taught that's possible. Now, isn't that interesting? We have every single idea under the sky available to us, but we don't talk about this at all. Why is that? It always makes me wonder when they're telling us, oh, look over here so that you don't look over here, right? So that's very interesting. That's why I think you're spot on focusing on sovereignty related to sexuality, because sexuality, there's just too much in the culture that is telling us that it's wrong. For me not to look at that and wonder, what are they hiding?
Yeah, exactly. And sexuality, almost like the act of sex, is like kind of the end product of this for me. Like, this is about pleasure. This is about allowing ourselves to feel pleasure. And I've been looking at this from a bigger daily perspective, not just in terms of, pleasurable sensations related to intimacy and sex. But like you said before, we're so busy. We're so having to keep up with things and taking on bigger and bigger responsibilities and meeting others' expectations. That's another big one as well, that we don't allow pleasure. We don't slow down and even just enjoy the pleasure of eating food. Because anything we do to allow pleasure in, to slow down and receive it, is giving little signals to our nervous system that it is safe to feel. And ultimately, it is this lack of safety, as I've said before, in feeling things that has us devolving our power out. It has us handing our sovereignty over and saying, hey, doctor, fix my problem. Hey, government, solve this issue. Hey, activists, take care of everything while I sit back and complain. So along the road to reclaiming our sexual sovereignty, there is the allowance of pleasure in all its forms, which is being in the present moment, I think. So friggin' simple. For example, this beautiful gold sparkly drink bottle I have with me. Just the act of holding it and feeling its coolness on a hot summer's day, its texture and feeling its coolness. That's how simple pleasure is, right? But when we're not in the present moment ever, then all these opportunities bypasses. And our system never gets these moments of really feeling something good. What do you think about that? What's your experience?
I absolutely agree with you. When I mentioned that I was working all the time in my business to numb myself, I was never in the present. I was willing to do whatever it took to not be where I was. And that's what it was. And that's why I don't judge people who do drugs. Basically, they were at a point where they don't even want to be alive, but because they don't want to take themselves out, they'll find whatever way to distract themselves, right? And what greater distraction than becoming an addict to some drug? Yes. That's why, again, I don't judge people. We all cope with pain differently, but really, what's the underlying reality of things? We're all in pain. We're running around in pain. And it takes courage to finally look at it and say, I'm living in a way that doesn't make me happy. And I have a right to feel pleasure. Pleasure is a dirty word, right? In our culture, we have been told to feel guilty. If I am sitting down for half an hour, especially if I have children, it means I'm either a bad mom or I'm not producing as much as I could be. It's almost like we're bees and we have to be producing all the time. I always tell people it's not about doing, it's about being. You can do all you want, but who are you being behind that doing? And that's the difference between me today and me several years ago. I work a lot still because I'm a single mom and, I don't have anybody feeding me unless I go out and make it happen. But I am a different person. I have different motivations. I am much more present. I know why I'm doing the things I'm doing. I'm doing them because I have to, so that I get to be with my daughter, so that my daughter has a good life. I never forget why I'm doing things. The truth is, if I had a choice, I would be on a beach with my daughter, we would have a great life. So I'm always looking, how can I make my life better in that sense? I don't have a need to buy, 300 pairs of shoes. And I make that example because I have owned 300 pairs of shoes and even more, which is a joke when I think about it now. This is how they get us. Yeah. For me, shopping was a way, again, to distract myself. It's just another type of addiction. The whole point is I'm not happy. And therefore, I need to look for happiness outside of myself.
Out there.
Until you cannot find anything outside of yourself. You can all you find outside in your reality is a reflection of who you are inside. If you are miserable inside, you will only find misery out there. If you're happy, doesn't matter what's happening out in the world, you're going to be happy because all you're going to see is happy stuff. I am a happy person nowadays. So while I see the madness that's going on out there, it's really not affecting me. Why? Because I have done the shadow work. I have done the hard work. I know who I am. I'm not scared. I don't care what happens. I'm not scared. I know what I'm capable of. But if you have not done this work and you feel fragile and vulnerable, you're going to be scared of anything. Everything is going to blow you over.
Yeah, and they're capitalizing on that, right? Because they know that a vast majority of people haven't had the courage or the resources to go inside of themselves and face their discomforts, to face their sadness, to face their repression. And therefore, they will continue to cooperate. I think you mentioned about being. I think there is also the receivership issue for me, and how very poor we are at allowing ourselves to receive. And I think of this not just from the sexual sovereignty perspective, but even in everyday life. And I always joke with my British friends, you're particularly bad at this one, British people. Allowing people to help you, allowing yourself to receive without making excuses for it or minimizing it, but literally just opening yourself up to be worthy enough to receive in the way that you like to give. And when you start to notice, and I often have this discussion with my clients, I know you give, like you do this, this, and this, but let's talk about what you allow yourself to receive. And when they notice, like, oh, I'm not very good at that, how are we possibly going to get the capacity to get this energetic flow of our sexuality, of our pleasure, of allowing ourselves to be in intimate connection if we're not able to receive?
Absolutely. I think the biggest lie, one of the biggest lies we've been told, is that you're a good person if you give and you're a bad person if you receive. Now, we all know that if you're take all the time, yes, there's a problem there. But we have gone to the other extreme where we basically never take. The point is, well, when you think about it, who are you to give to somebody and the other person is supposed to receive from you, but God forbid the other person should give to you? And all of a sudden, it means that you're not good enough. So what are you saying? The other person who's taking from you, that you're giving to, is not as good as you are? Because this is what's going on, is that we think that if we take, we're in debt. We're not as worthy as the other person. So it's okay for me to give because it means I'm better than you. I mean, that's not even giving. This is not even brotherly. No. This makes no sense. When
transactional.
Correct. And so this is the same point we were making before about fear. When you start breaking down and actually analyzing what you're doing, where your thoughts are coming from, you realize we have a lot of thoughts that are not so great. And I think that's what a lot of people are afraid of. They're afraid of looking at themselves and saying, I'm not so great. Well, guess what? The moment you start looking at yourself, you're actually becoming greater. Because that's all it takes. We are so afraid of finding out that we're such evil people because we've been told our entire life that we are evil.
I like that.
But guess what? Our darkness and our light are part of the same. We are everything. It's not just joy, happiness, and fun. There are good emotions. And if you're scared and sad and depressed, you're a bad person. We are all one. Everything is part of the whole.
Yeah.
And it's okay. I actually was sick for several days. I've had a really bad cold and I'm just now getting over it. And you know what? I felt, this is where I look at these things. So I'm not just talking, I look at myself. So I know where we come from. And I'm looking at this and say, oh my goodness, I've done nothing. I've been completely unproductive. Or, oh my goodness, I don't know if I'll ever have the energy to work ever again. We exaggerate, we go off of these tangents. Well, guess what? It helps me to reach out to my friends and say, hey, I'm feeling like crap right now. And I know this is not me, but hey, is this normal? And it's okay. That's where your friends get to give to you. This is how we all become stronger as a community, because giving and taking are the same coin. There are two sides of the same coin. The second you are giving, you're allowing somebody else to take. And the second you're allowing somebody to give to you, you're making them stronger too.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we have to stop being so selfish. That's the difference. Like we think we are better than other people when we're giving. Whoever came up with that?
Well, paradigms were cast upon us. I think one of the biggest issues, and we'll bring it to a close on this issue of separation. We have been entrained to separate, to feel separate, to feel not as good as, and the media has done a brilliant job of that. But this competition, starts at school, like, the top, and you're in the special class because you can't keep up. Like this sense of separating us from each other because, this person's unsafe to be around, or I'm not as good as this person, therefore I'm intimidated by them. But worse, Clea, is this separation from our own inner wisdom. As you said, the dark and the light have to coexist. There's no way we're going to be able to access our own light unless we meet the shadow, because the two they coexist, right? And I always imagine it's like a giant boulder. Our shadow work is a giant boulder. And when we have the courage to just be with it and it moves a little bit, it's like, here come the rays of light from the cave where it's been there all along, because we are this perfection all along. But we have been separated from it. And so sovereignty, reclamation of sovereignty, is about coming back to, coming home to the absolute perfection that we are. And all of the layers that society has put over us, unwittingly, our parents have done it too, because they didn't know any better either. We get the choice in reclaiming our sovereignty to meet each of the obstacles, each of the clods of mud that have been thrown on our energetic field, and one by one we get to take them off. And what are we left with? Self-love, self-acceptance. And that becomes a light that we can emit, and others recognize that and they want a little bit of that. So your closing thoughts on anything I've said there?
I agree 100%. And we could talk about separation for days, because really we could speculate that it starts with our separation from God, which we come here to experience what that separation feels like. We've created everything. So, but yes, absolutely. The whole idea, it gets leveraged. That's where the wedge gets put in there, is that they make you feel like, and we've created this, we're part of the culture. Like you said, even our parents have created this, and many of us have done this to our children as well. We have a focus on the separation. That's what's happening right now, whichever side of the divide you're on, it's still a divide. Whereas there are people like me and you, we're tired of separation. We've already explored it to the nth degree. We don't need to go any further with it. All I want is to be happy with friends and community. I just want to have a good time. There was a time where I would have been, you never would have caught me saying, I just want to have a good time. Because I thought that in order to be a decent human being, I had to be productive and I had to work myself to death. It's all about not loving yourself. And that's the most important thing I think we should leave viewers with, which is, if you don't learn to love yourself, they got you, because that's how they get us. is we end the work for them. I always say we're our own prison guards, because they can put in the idea, but we're the ones who go off and finish the job. Nobody's inside our head but us 24/7. We're the ones telling ourselves, no, I'm wrong. No, I'm stupid. No, I'm doing something that I shouldn't be doing. We're the ones who are doing the job of keeping ourselves down. The second you learn to love yourself, you're free. Basically, you set yourself free.
Absolutely love that. Yeah, that's a beautiful ending point. And yeah, we are our own prison guards. And I think that was one of the most devastating things for me when my marriage ended, was I realized I'd been in a prison, a self-imposed prison, and only us can take the key and get us out through our own courage. Yeah, beautiful. All right, so to finish up, what you will see below in the description is my link to my free 3 soulful shifts that you need to take to reclaim your sexual sovereignty. So you'll see the link to that. And Clea, tell us about what you've created and that I'm sharing today.
I have created a guide to how to spot a narcissist that's free. And I've also created actually a workbook, a guide to help people reclaim their power and overcome narcissistic situations, which doesn't just mean in relationships, but in general, again, in the world we live in. This is basically the way to regain your sovereignty so that you do become in charge of your own life.
Yeah, brilliant. All right, well, you will see the link to that incredible offering that Clea has below. And thank you, everyone. This is an important conversation. Sovereignty crosses all boundaries. It is in relation to all aspects of life, and it is a choice that we get to make. And only you can make that choice for yourself. So we do hope that our conversation has been helpful. And thank you, Clea, for hanging out with me. It's always lovely to chat, my darling.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. All right. Bye, everyone.